I heard the sickening pop before I felt the pain. My older brother James had twisted my arm behind my back because I'd refused to let him borrow my laptop again. Last time he borrowed it, he'd sold it for gambling money. Stop being so dramatic, Emily, Mom sighed as I clutched my right shoulder, tears streaming down my face. James was just playing around. You know how brothers are. But James, 24, wasn't just playing. At 17, I was tired of being his punching bag, tired of the excuses, tired of Mom pretending this was normal sibling behavior. This time, though, there was no hiding it. My shoulder was clearly dislocated, hanging at an awkward angle that made even Mom pause. Fine, she muttered, grabbing her car keys. Let's go to the ER. But remember, it was an accident. We don't need people getting the wrong idea about our family. James smirked from the couch, already back to scrolling through his phone. Sorry, sis, he called out, not sounding sorry at all. You should have just given me the laptop. The drive to Memorial Hospital was tense. Mom rehearsed the story with me. You were wrestling, things got a bit rough. But it was all in fun, right, Emily? I stayed silent, focusing on keeping my arm still as every bump in the road sent shockwaves of pain through my shoulder. This was the third time in 8 months I'd felt this particular pain, but the first time Mom had agreed to take me to the hospital. Usually she'd just give me ice and tell me to tough it out. The emergency room was busy, but a dislocated shoulder apparently warranted prompt attention. A nurse called me back while Mom was still filling out paperwork. She introduced herself as Jenny and helped me change into a gown. Can you tell me how this happened? She asked, her eyes kind but observant. Before I could answer, Mom burst into the room. Oh, just typical sibling roughhousing, she said with a forced laugh. Her brother doesn't know his own strength sometimes. Jenny's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She took my vitals and noted them in my chart, then said Dr. Andrews would be in shortly. Dr. Andrews was younger than I expected, maybe in his mid-30s, with glasses and a calm demeanor. He sat down at the computer and began reviewing my file. I watched as his brow furrowed, his fingers clicking through screen after screen. I see you've been here before, he said carefully. Multiple times, in fact. 3 visits to urgent care for shoulder injuries in the past 8 months, plus 2 ER visits for a sprained wrist and bruised ribs. Mom shifted in her chair. Emily's very active. She does sports. Which sports? Dr. Andrews asked, looking directly at me. I don't play sports, I admitted, avoiding Mom's warning glare. Dr. Andrews nodded, making a note in my file. I'd like to examine your shoulder now. Mrs. Parker, would you mind stepping out for a moment? Hospital protocol for examining teenage patients. That's ridiculous, Mom protested. I'm her mother. Nevertheless, it's our policy, he said firmly. The nurse will show you to the waiting area. Once Mom was gone, Dr. Andrews' whole demeanor changed. Emily, he said gently, I need you to be honest with me. These injuries, they're not from roughhousing, are they? Something in his voice, in the way he looked at me like he actually saw me, broke through the wall I built around my fear. My brother James, I whispered. He gets angry, takes things, when I say no. Dr. Andrews nodded, his face grave. How long has this been happening? Since Dad died 3 years ago, I said, the words tumbling out. Mom says he's just grieving, that he doesn't mean it. But today, my laptop. I need it for school, and he wanted to take it, and when I said no. He dislocated your shoulder, Dr. Andrews finished. He began examining my injury with careful hands. Emily, this pattern of injuries isn't normal. This isn't what loving siblings do to each other, no matter what your mom says. I know, I said, my voice barely audible. But Mom won't listen. She says family problems should stay in the family. Dr. Andrews looked me straight in the eyes. This isn't just a family problem anymore. This is abuse, and as a doctor, I have a legal obligation to report it. But more than that, I want to help you. Will you let me? For the first time in 3 years, someone was offering real help, not just excuses or band-aid solutions. I looked at the door, thinking of Mom in the waiting room with her ready explanations and James at home, probably already planning his next borrowing scheme. I took a deep breath, winced at the pain, and nodded. Yes, I said, please help me. Dr. Andrews worked quickly after that. While he prepared to reset my shoulder, he had Nurse Jenny bring in a social worker named Ms. Torres. The pain medication they gave me made everything feel slightly surreal, but it couldn't dull the relief of finally telling someone the truth. Your brother has a documented history of violent behavior, Ms. Torres said, consulting her tablet. 2 assault charges that were dropped, and a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend. I hadn't known about the restraining order, but I wasn't surprised. James had always been good at making others fear him while convincing our mom he was the victim. Mom will never believe me, I said, wincing as Dr. Andrews began the procedure to reset my shoulder. She'll say I'm trying to ruin James's life. 1, 2, 3, Dr. Andrews counted, then manipulated my arm. There was another pop, and suddenly my shoulder was back in place. The relief was immediate, though a deep ache remained. Your mother's belief isn't required, Ms. Torres explained while Dr. Andrews secured my arm in a sling. The evidence of repeated injuries, combined with your statement, is enough for us to take action. You're a minor, and we have a duty to protect you. A police officer arrived to take my statement. Officer Chen was patient, letting me tell my story at my own pace. I told her about the laptop, but also about the other times, the borrowed birthday money, the destroyed art projects, the threats if I told anyone. Your mother's enabling behavior is part of the abuse, Officer Chen explained. She's failing to protect you, which makes her complicit. Meanwhile, Mom was getting increasingly agitated in the waiting room. I could hear her demanding to see me, insisting this was all a misunderstanding. We have options, Ms. Torres said. Your aunt in Portland is willing to take you in. We've already contacted her. Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister, would stop visiting after arguing with Mom about James's behavior. She'd seen through him years ago, but Mom had accused her of trying to divide the family. James will be arrested, Officer Chen added. With your documented injuries and statement, we have enough to charge him with assault. The next few hours passed in a blur. Mom finally burst into the room, but by then everything was in motion. She alternated between begging me to recant my statement and threatening me with family abandonment. How could you do this to your brother? She cried. He's had such a hard time since your father died. Mrs. Parker, Dr. Andrews interrupted firmly, your son has been systematically abusing your daughter. These x-rays show repeated trauma to her shoulder joint. This isn't sibling rivalry, it's assault. You don't understand our family, Mom shouted. I understand enough, he replied calmly. I understand that Emily needs protection, and if you won't provide it, we will. Officer Chen received word that James had been arrested at our house. They found my laptop in his car, along with receipts from a pawn shop showing a pattern of selling stolen items. Aunt Sarah was already on her way from Portland. Ms. Torres helped me pack a bag from home, accompanied by police officers who kept Mom at a distance while I gathered my belongings. This is temporary, Ms. Torres explained. Just until we can ensure your safety and James gets the help he needs. Mom followed us around the house, switching between anger and pleading. Emily, please, he's your brother. We can work this out as a family. But looking at my bedroom, the broken lock, the missing valuables, the chair I pushed against the door at night, I knew there was no working it out. This wasn't family, this was survival. As we left the house, I saw James's car being towed away for evidence. Mom stood in the doorway, crying, but not reaching out to stop me. Maybe, somewhere deep down, she knew this had to happen. You did the right thing, Dr. Andrews told me before I left the hospital. It takes courage to break the silence. Remember that. In the social worker's car, heading to a temporary safe house to wait for Aunt Sarah, I touched my shoulder gently. For the first time in years, I felt something beyond the pain and fear. I felt hope. My phone buzzed with messages from Mom. Please come home. Don't destroy our family. James said he's sorry. I turned off my phone and watched the familiar streets disappear behind us. Sometimes I realize saving yourself means leaving behind the people who refuse to save you. 6 months later, I sat in a Portland courtroom, my Aunt Sarah's hand steady on my shoulder, my now healed shoulder. The judge was reviewing the evidence one last time before announcing James's sentence. My brother sat with his lawyer, looking smaller somehow without his usual intimidating presence. Dr. Andrews had flown in to testify, presenting my medical records and explaining the pattern of injuries he discovered. In my professional opinion, he'd stated firmly, these injuries were consistent with repeated intentional trauma, not accidents or rough play. Mom was there too, sitting behind James. She'd spent the last 6 months sending alternating messages of guilt and blame. I miss you, followed by how could you abandon your family? But living with Aunt Sarah had shown me what a healthy home felt like. One without fear, without missing belongings, without the need to barricade my door at night. The judge cleared his throat. James Parker, this court finds your actions particularly disturbing. You systematically abused your minor sister, using physical violence and intimidation to exploit her financially. The evidence shows a clear pattern of escalating violence that, left unchecked, could have resulted in even more serious injury. James was sentenced to 3 years in prison with mandatory counseling and anger management. The judge also made the restraining order permanent. He wouldn't be allowed near me until I was at least 21, and even then, only if I chose to allow contact. After the sentencing, Mom approached me in the courthouse hallway. She looked older, tired. "Emily," she said softly, "I'm sorry, I should have protected you." "Yes," I replied, "you should have." Aunt Sarah stepped between us. "Karen, Emily needs time. If she wants to work on your relationship, it'll be on her terms, not yours." My new life in Portland was everything I'd never dared hope for. I was finishing high school with straight A's, no longer missing classes because of accidents. My art teacher had entered my work in a state competition, and I'd won second place. Aunt Sarah had helped me open a new bank account only I could access, and I'd even started a part-time job at a local bookstore. Dr. Andrews kept in touch, sending occasional emails to check on my progress. His intervention had inspired me. I'd decided to study psychology in college, hoping to help other teenagers trapped in abusive situations. "You're thriving," my therapist Dr. Martinez noted during one of our weekly sessions. "But it's okay to still feel angry about what happened." "I'm not just angry," I admitted. "I'm grateful. Grateful to Dr. Andrews for seeing through the lies, grateful to Officer Chen for believing me, grateful to Aunt Sarah for giving me a real home." The nightmares about James had mostly stopped, though sometimes I still woke up checking my door's lock. But Aunt Sarah had installed a security system, and for the first time in years I felt safe in my bedroom. 1 year after that day in the ER, I received a letter from James in prison. Aunt Sarah offered to read it first, but I decided to open it myself. "Dear Emily, the counselors here are helping me understand what I did to you. I can't blame Dad's death or gambling addiction anymore. I hurt you repeatedly, and I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm working to change." I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to read the rest, but not yet. For now, I was focused on healing and building my future. Mom had started therapy too, finally confronting her role in enabling James' abuse. She'd sent a birthday card last month, not asking for anything, just saying she was proud of my art award and hoping I was happy. Standing in my room at Aunt Sarah's house, looking at my new art supplies and intact laptop, I touched my shoulder, once a symbol of fear, now a reminder of the day I found the courage to speak up. On my wall hung the framed quote Dr. Andrews had sent me. "Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls your life." Later that week, I spoke at a hospital training session about recognizing signs of abuse. In the audience, I saw the same determination in the medical staff's eyes that I'd seen in Dr. Andrews's that day. The commitment to look deeper, to question the excuses, to help those who couldn't help themselves. Sometimes, I told them, saving someone is as simple as being the first person to say, "I don't believe this is an accident." Sometimes that's all it takes to break the cycle. As I left the hospital, my shoulders strong and straight, I smiled. James had tried to break me, but instead, he'd set me free. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to our greatest strength, and mine had led me here, to a future I was finally free to choose.